千里之行，始于足下。A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. I would like to invite you to center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment in time, to the here and now. To be fully present and mindfully aware as we all ready ourselves for this sacred process of the Tao. You're going to see in chapter 61 that 60 or 61 are connected. So 61 is sort of like the sequel of 60. It continues the theme from 60, large country, small country. The country is, of course, in ancient times, that would be a kingdom. And that is a metaphor for your life. Now, it has an interesting chapter title in Chinese. So once again, the chapter title is 3 characters, where the last character, the character to the right, is always just the Chinese character for chapter. The first character means to reside, to occupy, or to dwell. The second character, which is the character in the middle, it means lower, down, or below. So together, 居下章 means to dwell below, the chapter of dwelling below. To take a lower position has a very specific meaning in the Tao. It means having a humble disposition. So it is referred to repeatedly in the Tao Te Ching that water flows to the lowest place. That's metaphoric language to say that if you want to be like the Tao of the water, you flow like water, automatically occupying the lowest place, meaning that you are humble. Now, this idea has numerous applications. Those of you who have practiced Tai Chi, other forms of exercise, maybe Qigong, then you already know that lower center of gravity means greater power and stability. Even if you don't practice those arts, you also already know that you have to crouch down in order to jump high. So the lower position is a position of power. It's a position that is ready to explode into movement or action, like a high jump. So to dwell below is to be humble, but at the same time, it is also to be ready. It is also to possess that power in which to act and make changes. So simultaneously, the chapter title has multiple layers of meaning already built in. So let's take a look at what the chapter actually says. Tao Te Ching, chapter 61. The large country is like the lowest river, the converging point of the world, the receptive female of the world. The female always overcomes the male with serenity, using serenity as the lower position. Thus, if the large country is lower than the small country, then it can take the small country. If the small country is lower than the large country, then it can be taken by the large country. Thus, one uses the lower position to take, the other uses the lower position to be taken. The large country only wishes to gather and protect people. The small country only wishes to join and serve people so that both obtain what they wish. The larger one should assume the lower position. This chapter is among the most confusing from the Tao Te Ching because everything is spoken metaphorically and there's the constant exchange of large country, smaller country. It can be extremely confusing without guidance. But as usual, by the time we're done with this chapter, I am positive that everything will be crystal clear for everyone. You will see how the cryptic words apply to your life. Ideally, at the very end, with a clear understanding, you will be wondering how you were ever confused in the first place. Like, these words cannot mean anything else but what they say to you so loudly and clearly. Now, I'll point out the confusing elements as we go, but for now, we should be looking at the structure to see if we can identify the hidden sections of the chapter. Starting from the top, starting from line 1, we'll scan down slowly to see if we can pick out the same characters that occur, that repeat from one line to the next. So right off the bat, I think I see a bunch of repeating characters from line 2 to line 3. Are you able to see that? If not, take a look at my red highlight here. There are 3 characters in common between line 2 and line 3. They are translated the same way and identified in red on the right-hand column of the world, quote unquote, is the English translation. The order is a little bit different. The first 2 characters, 天下, that's translated as the world at the very last part of the English sentence. 之, the third character there, that's of, except with the order reversed. So the last character that you see here, even though it's one character, it's translated as 3 words, the converging point. And then we have another character, the last character here in line 3, that's also translated into 3 English words, the receptive female. So we'll explain what those mean in just a moment. For now, we should continue on with our analysis of the sections. So take a look at these 2 highlights. It would seem as if we should draw a red line between 3 and 4. But then remember that we always have to look at the sense that these lines make and whether or not the meaning continues into the next lines. And that's what we can tell in the next part. Note that the last character of line 3 becomes the first character of line 4. That's the character for the female. Then that's not all. We're noticing that there are 2 characters in line 4 that's repeated in line 5. Looking at the translation, it seems to make sense. The text in purple here correspond to the characters in purple with serenity. So then female and serenity are the elements that repeat from line to line, indicating that you have continuous thought from line 3 to line 4, and then from line 4 to line 5. And this is true. They actually are one section. Then we get into a discussion about the large country and the small country, but that's a different section with a different different meaning associated with that. So the first section is from line 1 to line 5. It's an introduction to the ideas that are to come. Then, looking at the second section here, from line 6 onward, we're seeing repetition, but it's kind of a mirroring repetition. What it's doing, this is the confusing part. It is playing on the large country and the small country, and it mirrors them, like it flips them around. Here's what I mean. If you look at line 6 and line 8, these lines are largely the same, except large country and small country are flipped around. So that's why I say they mirror one another. It's not a repeat, it's a mirroring. And then there's an extra character here, the first character, gu, that means thus. But then you see the similarity in all of the other characters. And that's not all. You see the same kind of mirroring in line 7 and line 9. So I've highlighted them in blue, as you can see. Same kind of thing. So now we're beginning to tell the poetic construction among these lines. And then one more. There's the repetition as well from 10 to 11, but not the repetition kind, the mirroring kind, similar to the context of the previous 4 lines. So it suggests that we can now call that a section. So section 2 is revealed to be from line 6 to line 11, leaving the last 4 lines as the final section. And indeed, we can see that the last 2 lines, the first 2 lines of the last section, or line 12 and line 13, also do the mirroring of the large country and the small country. So highlighting it this way actually brings out the context a little bit, so you can easily see the structure of this chapter by looking at the highlights. So that's how this divides up into 3 sections. Now we're going to tackle section 1, starting with the first 3 lines. Now, even the first line is an important line in the Tao Te Ching. The large country is like the lowest river. So remember, in chapter 60, it starts out talking about ruling a large country is like cooking a small fish. Now, it is saying that, well, the large country, not a small fish, but the lowest river. So it's a different metaphor now. What does that mean? Well, the lowest river is a recurring concept from the Tao Te Ching. The key to understanding the lowest river is to realize that the lowest river receives water from smaller rivers upstream, the tributaries. As the river forms and flows across the land, it is collecting from smaller streams that flow into it. It is lower than the smaller streams. The smaller streams are positioned higher, which is how water can flow into the lowest river. So if you think about international relations, the large country that receives tributes from smaller countries is like the larger, lowest river that receives water from the tributaries, the smaller rivers, the streams, the creeks that flow into it. That's what it means. The large country receives tributes from smaller countries. Definitely true in ancient times. Ancient China received tributes from the smaller countries that bordered its ancient border. Same with ancient Rome, tributes from conquered territories, smaller countries. So the power of the lowest river. The lowest river is larger with powerful currents, much more water, And that's because it is the aggregate, it is the sum, it's the gathering of all the resources, all the water from the incoming streams. So the tributes paid by the small country to the large country makes the large country ever more powerful, ever more full of prestige. Thus, we can say this, the large country's power is from the contributions of small countries. It's an important concept. It's a recurring concept in the Tao Te Ching, and I'm going to make a reference to something that we have studied previously. That's another place in the Tao Te Ching where this is shown, and that's from Tao Te Ching chapter 32. It provides an even more specific imagery along the same vein. The idea is water flowing from streams to rivers, and then from rivers emptying into the ocean. And the ocean is, of course, at the lowest of the low. Here is the chapter. Here's 2 lines from chapter 32. Line 13 and line 14. Let's just take a look at the translation. It says, the existence of the Tao in the world is like streams in the valley into rivers and the ocean. So that's a basic idea in the Tao. The river is lower than the stream. It's more powerful than the stream. The ocean is lower than any river, and it's unimaginably greater than all the rivers of the world combined. Therefore, think about it this way. When you start out on the path of the Tao, learning about the Tao, you are a small stream. And when you advance in the Tao, when you understand the Tao better, you've transformed from a small stream to a river. You are now larger, more powerful, there's more water, you are gathering resources from smaller streams. When you have completely mastered the Tao, you have transformed from river to ocean. So the ocean is a metaphor for the vastness of the Tao. It's much greater than the rivers. This idea is repeated elsewhere in the Tao Te Ching. There is another repetition that I am not showing now only because it is coming up. In chapter 66 of the Tao Te Ching, it'll say, rivers and oceans can be the kings of 100 valleys because of their goodness in staying low. So we're going to talk about that when we advance to chapter 66. For now, though, you can see the relevance. You can see the connection. These different chapters are all talking about the same thing, using water as a metaphor, using the ocean as the Tao. And therefore, the large country is like the lowest river. Of course, now it makes complete sense. So let's cover another line. Let's apply this idea to life. We always have to do that. What does it mean to be a large country in life? From the perspective of Lao Tzu, it means that you are building a great life, that you are becoming a great person. So, large country maps to the great person in this context, applied to life. So now you can think of the great person as someone who nurtures other people or leads other people, has a positive influence on everybody around him or her. That's a great person. And here, what it's actually talking about is that the great person's greatness comes from others, the smaller rivers that flow into it. Also, the great person is the lowest river. The lowest river is the most humble. Thus, greatness implies humility. One who aspires to be great must be humble. What that means is that if you are in a position to lead, it's not just inspiring others and, hey guys, here's what we got to do. Let's go. It's not just about that. It's also being humble, knowing that you cannot do everything yourself. You got to have other people's help. So, not just inspiring others, it's also asking for their help. Great leaders throughout history know the virtue and the power inherent in humbly asking for help. And you can even frame it like, hey, we're trying to do this great thing. I need your help. You can even say, we can help one another. Your goals and my goals are aligned. We want the same thing. Let's help each other out. Why don't you join my team? Okay, so bottom line is this. It's never beneath you to ask for help. Indeed, it is a sign of your greatness. So remember, smaller rivers flowing to a large river, it just means that those that you lead, those you nurture, those you guide, those are the people whose goals are aligned with yours. So just in the first line of Dao Jing 61, there's already a lot to talk about. There's the metaphor of great country being compared to the lowest river, what that means to the individual, what that means to someone who follows the path of the Tao, and what that implies to the disposition of that person, to be humble. So there's a lot of richness that we need to explore in this chapter to turn confusion into clarity. We are reaching the end of our time together today, so I want to jump to the summary. So of course, we start out talking about the large country. The large country maps to the great person. And if you want, you can go back to 60 and map it to the great life, building a great life. Here, 60 to 61, building a great life and becoming a great person are synonymous with one another. If you are a great person, you are building a great life. If you are building a great life, you are a great person. So the lowest river is what we went through. It just means the greater your aspiration, the more humble you must be. Now, what about what we're going to talk about next time? Well, there's the convergence point. What is the convergence point? It's going to reiterate that you are basically collecting the energies of the smaller rivers that flow into the larger river, the river at the lowest position. And you must perceive that way because you are not a one-man band. It is not a one-man show. And of course, nowadays, we have to specify you are not a one-person show. One-woman shows are also quite common. So to generalize from the two, you are not a one-person show. No person is isolated. We all must work with, help other people, and be in turn helped by other people. That's why it is important to harness and synergize the power of the team. That's just a summary statement. There's a lot that goes into that idea that we will explore next time. The other idea, equally important, is the soft approach. This is the part that's referred to by the receptive female. The receptive female is not a literal female. It's talking about yin energy, which exists in everyone. The yin energy is the soft approach. It is the approach of nurture, compassion, and the gentle touch. And the summary statement here says it costs nothing to be kind. But as it is with the earlier statement there that you see, harness and synergize the power of the team, there's a huge discussion that goes into it, which we will talk about next time. So again, a quick preview for what is to come. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us all travel safely so we can meet again. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.